Yes. Hey, folks, who is joining in? Thank you for attending the session. Let's just give it a few more minutes. We are around 3 minutes early, so we'll give it a few more minutes for more people to join. All right. So you are joining from office, Chushul?
Yep. At the office.
Nice. Yeah.
I think the main is if you're going to running sales, you have to work Saturdays. That's kind of the takeaway here. So yeah,
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
correct.
One of the things is I've noticed is so there is just to be this comment like whenever I talk to anybody in operations, right?
Hmm.
I tell them, hey, it's a little late. Can I actually disturb you? Like probably 9 o'clock in the night. They'll be like, hey, I'm an operations guy. You can call me 2 a.m. I'm supposed to answer. That's how things actually work.
Yes. Uh,
Uh, yeah. Nice. So I'm working from home today, by the way.
you SaaS people can chill out, you know.
Oh, it's not exactly chilling out.
Yeah, just having some fun. Yeah, understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, but a lot of people are calling. I think a lot of startups have begun calling people to home,
Oh, that's
grudgingly,
yeah,
begrudgingly. But yeah,
yeah,
that
yeah.
is it. I think
Like
nobody's going
now,
the full work from office, but they're doing like even at least 2-3 times a week from office. That is also
yeah.
something that we follow. So 2-3 days a week in office. And
We have a similar structure too. It's not exactly everyday office as such, but you need the face-to-face time to like kind of like do things faster, better collaboration, etc.
correct. And it's
Yeah,
setting up remote meetings. It's actually a pain. Nobody has solved that. So it's
I
like nobody
know.
solved for that 5 minute connectivity. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's true. I think Slack Huddle is kind of coming to close for us. It's better than setting up meetings like before.
uh, I think we use Discord for the so for the tech teams. We use the Discord. Then we can
Yeah,
have just the call and all that. So you're
yeah,
there. But that's like problem with the Discord UI. It's good for the techies, but for the
correct.
rest of the people, it's like no. Matlab,
Slack
Tommy
has a
come.
same thing now, Huddle.
I know. Slack it.
Yeah, yeah. It's nice. Let's see. All right, so it's 7. Let's just give it another minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and then we can actually get started.
Awesome.
I'm just gonna test the comments if the comment is working. Yeah. God, yeah, it should be okay. So if I comment over there, I get comment here. This is nice. All right, I think it's time to get started.
Yep.
Hmm.
Cool.
Okay, sounds good. All right, guys, let's get started. Folks, welcome to the second episode of OpsWorld. So, OpsWorld is an operation session, so where we talk to expert operators, trying to understand their insights into the world of operations, right? So today we have a very interesting session into sales. So we have Chushul Suri here, so who has actually joined us and has accommodated the time to talk about his insights into the world of sales. Okay, just giving you a brief intro about Chushul. So Chushul passed out from IIT Roorkee from 2015 and did digital marketing right out of college. He joined Meesho as an employee number 4. He was the first business employee. So now imagine the scale of Meesho, and I'm sure you can get all the insights, the early insights of how Meesho actually started working in the early days. So then he moved on to Great Learning as a senior PM sales, where he was exposed to the sales world. So now we know how he got into sales. And now he runs his own startup, Medbikri, in the healthcare space. So we're going to talk a lot about Medbikri today and how he's actually structuring the sales team over there. So the Medbikri as a company, they are looking to solve the healthcare woes of people in tier 2, tier 3, and lower cities by using pharmacy as a partner. Okay. So Chushul, welcome to the
Yep.
show.
Thanks, Bala, for having you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's our pleasure, man. Awesome. So we've been interacting for more than a year. We've had chance to like work together sometimes. So it's been
Mhm.
quite amazing.
Mhm.
And we connected about what 2 3 years ago,
Yep,
in a
yep, yep.
podcast altogether, right?
Yep.
But yeah, like wouldn't you start with a like a little bit of intro? I think the basic intro we actually covered. So if
Mhm.
anything I missed and you want to cover, that's one.
Uh,
And second, we'd also like to know more about what Medbikri is, how are you solving this healthcare problem, and how is
mhm.
that working? Yeah, over to you.
Awesome, awesome. I think my intro, I think it's like fine. I think I haven't done that much to have a long intro. So as long as 30 seconds, that's fine. That is how it should be scheduled. But I'll talk a lot more on Medbikri. So I think the insight that we started essentially on was that, pharmacies, especially in low tier cities, they act as basically partners and healthcare partners for low tier people. And basically, the level of education is low. You don't have that many hospitals. They're not all specialists. So they kind of guide or handle their patients. And my mom was a doctor, and I'm also based out of Jalandhar, which you can call a small city. And that's where I saw this. I saw patients be referred by my pharmacy, and then obviously there was the news of people not going to a doctor and just self-medicating. Okay, like they can go to pharmacy and say, "Give boss, give me a headache medicine," and they oblige that kind of a scenario. Uh, and that's and so, for example, if you want to see how many people actually were affected by COVID, you don't need to see the COVID test. You need to check how many people had Dolo. So that is a way more accurate way of doing things. So I said, okay, okay. And this is a totally unorganized market. Nobody knows, including the pharma companies themselves, what is sales happening on the ground. They get it, some estimates a few months later. Nobody knows what happens there, what their roles are. Because everybody in healthcare thinks it's a doctor thing, but I am kind of disagree there. Obviously, doctor has a way major role. The pharmacists also help there, and we can use them as a channel to reach smaller tiers. So, because example, you want to find a hospital or doctor in, let's say, a village, you'll find a pharmacy nearby. We'll basically covering 2 3 villages. So our essentially idea was that you have use this as a partner to sell medical service. So for example, let's say you're sitting in a Meerut or let's say in UP in a small village, you want to get access to a Apollo doctor. You have to normally come to Delhi for the same, but now you can get to same doctor. He can prescribe you medicines. The pharmacy will give you medicine in case of a test or something that can happen there. But in case that's if something serious, obviously we can help you coordinate shuttle to the hospital. So eventually it was ideal. Ki how do you take the idea of a hospital, with the one with the grand building and all the thing, and how do you break it down so that you reduce all the capex there is, but provide the same quality of care because that is what that matters. Because I was like, if whenever you open a hospital, why should you have to invest in so much a building? But you can do it piece by piece when it takes. So that is essentially the idea. So I think that obviously doing such a thing is in a phases kind of scenario. So in phase one, we basically are, just a matter of acquiring pharmacy and solving their problems. With the problems on stockouts, basically they want to service the customers, how to track their chronic patients and stuff like that. And then once we get a foothold on that, build it out, and then move on to do it, which the pilots are obviously underway. So that is, I think, brief about it. So yeah, so I think that is where basically how to acquire pharmacies becomes a question because our aim is, basically reach to depths where nobody else has reached, right? Get pharmacies there. So that
Right.
is, we decided, okay, now how do we acquire pharmacies? And that's how the conversations for the sales team, got into place. So, yeah.
Nice, nice. Tell us about when did you start the company?
So we started working on this product. Basically, I left my job in November 2020. At that point, I had no co-founders, no idea, nothing. Eventually, I buddied up with Mahesh. I met him in Great Learning. We had a values match. And I basically, March 2021 was when we finally said, okay, now let's build a product for the world. By June or June, we reached the first version of product. It was basically a very simple one screen app. It didn't have an OTP verification at that time. So that's, how simple the MVP was.
Yeah,
Basically,
yeah.
we just self-verified the users. That is how simple it was. But it proved out okay, what we built was actually valuable. Users did it. We had like 4 users on the same first day. And we were like, yeah, something on the analytics dashboard. So
Man.
from there, and then eventually we basically about 3 4 months later we raised a funding round from 314 Capital, and we've been scaling down. Now I think we basically on a monthly basis we are basically doing 10,000. I can share exact numbers, but we are doing 10,000 plus active monthly active pharmacies on the platform, and the plus is a little big plus. And this is a very like one of the largest numbers in tier two, tier three India. Nobody has that many pharmacies as we have because we are very focused on hiring them and acquisition them. And obviously, Zorp knows some of our numbers because we used to manage the sales team.
Yeah,
So
That's
That
awesome.
is correct. Correct.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great.
And
Nice.
how do we, so basically the thing is, the funny thing is, even though I had a background in sales, great learning, our first version, we never thought we'll do sales. Okay, we got into feet on seat sales organically. So we were also there कि नहीं हम तो क्या कहते हैं, we do it the scalable way, the digital way. That is how 90% of founders say कि अरे I don't want a sales team and I'll just do it digitally. Like I'll do some growth hacking, acquire it, and I did that. Like in Misho, it was a very different thing, which is what we really have a sales team then back then. We basically did it all digital, and I was like, yeah, we'll do it digitally. But the thing is that ultimately you have to talk, see to your customers and see where they are heading. And
Right.
ultimately, what we saw was that with digital, we're getting acquisitions very, very cheap. Okay, like install were coming at 2-3 rupees. We did a dream, and that's a pharmacy, and pharmacy is ex-customer, so CAC was instantly low. But we were not getting enough, basically regular usage. There were people had some doubts, and basically, because a pharmacy is very different from a typical customer. Like for example, a pharmacy has a lot of people, or in general, kirana stores have a lot of people who are visiting their shop, and so you don't have a time to get up a phone call and all that. And basically, they are used to salesmen coming to the door and selling essentially. And we were like, hey, okay, let's do one thing. Let's experiment with a sales team, and we got some very very good results from a first experiment. That's when we started double down. So the
Okay.
important thing is you have to figure out what works or doesn't work for you. But basically, what works, then you have to respect it, and doesn't work, say it. So there's no answer should I do sales or not. It depends on your TG, on the quality of the team, because running a sales team is also not that easy. So how quality of team, your TG, product, how much training it requires, stuff like that. So you have to take a call. How do you acquire it? But once you take that call, then you have to double and triple down. That is what is
Makes
kind of important. Yeah.
Cool. So, if I may roughly summarize this, so what you're saying is, so you have a product which needs to go to the customer. So your sales team not only solves for the acquisition problem today, they also solve for the activation problem. Correct?
Yes, exactly. So we don't incentivize. So that is, I think, incentives is a very, very big thing. So initially we incentivize for acquisition, but eventually because they were, then we didn't see the activation करके. Eventually we basically solve for activation, which solve both problems
Make
simultaneously because you need people who stick with you. You don't need people to acquire, right? This is not the time where you have to show downloads ultimately. So that is there. So it's very important for the incentive. We'll talk about incentives in detail, how to design it, but it's also the activation training problem.
Interesting. So it's
Yep.
okay. Got it. So, but if you look at like just looking at the economics point of view, right? Like for a platform like you, where you need to have scale, the lot of questions that actually come up would be related to digital. Obviously, your CAC will be very low. You also mentioned that. But if you go to you have a sales team, obviously the CAC is going to be like much higher than what you're going to do in digital.
Mhm.
But if you probably do a fully loaded cost with respect to activation here versus activation there, probably the sales team will actually do much better. Is my understanding?
So like roughly, it's like obviously per install basis, there's no comparison. You cannot
Yeah.
get an install at 3 rupees, right? But on basically a cost basis, even though because the digital is so efficient, but there's basically less than a 2x difference. So basically, you can say the cost of activation digital is basically somewhere between half or that number. So
Okay.
the difference is not that much. But the point is very, very scalable if you want a deep. So that again depends on TG. For example, there are not a lot of medical shops in India per se.
Mm.
So there are 50 lakh medical shops in India. And digital, because the activation percentage is very, very low. So there is basically a 10x difference in the activation percentages.
Yeah.
And because of those, so at one time you'll stop growing. Because like I said, the activation only 5-10% of people, the pool needs to grow. But the pharmacy is not going to grow exponentially,
Yeah.
unlike a user thing. So if your TG is kind of, you can say limited. So like if you see a lot of companies of B2B space, people who target factories, people who target schools, people who target the schools, factories, kirana shops, electronic shops, they all tend to go that way because they understand that digital, you have to go for the highest activation rate because you have to get the chunk of people do, which is what FOS activated. So we do this, how we generally balance it out, we do digital in places where basically the FOS team is not ready yet, or we do digital as a precursor to it. So how to make a sales team more efficient is give them very good leads. So every sales team loves leads, right? So that is how we generally do it. So people come acquire by digital, the sales team will then you can say activate them. So that is kind of best combination. We're not 100% there yet, but that is the first step. So that is how you make it more and more efficient because it's like you don't have to hunt for leads in the open market. You give them leads, they know where to go. So you're optimized. So see, with the feet on sales team, it's all about optimizing the day and the
Yeah.
number of shops that they can visit. If we have a very optimized way, we already reduce the cost significantly, which is what we essentially did.
Awesome. So I just want to like kind of like a different direction here and cover some other backgrounds. So the reason is I'm very curious to talk about the unit economics, which we are getting more and more organically into. But we'll probably do some background and come to this, right?
Yep,
But
yep.
we'll definitely talk about this. I think this is one of the most important topics.
Mhm.
Cool. So coming back to your journey, right? When you decided that you want to use the sales team to do this acquisition plus activation in the initial period, so how did it get started? What was the first month like?
So we made mistakes like everybody else. So one of the Satya Vachan for everybody else who's doing it is basically for sales people, roles where it's don't need a lot of innovation, a bit of innovation, and like operation sales. Always hire top down. Okay, so hire the leadership first, and then
Okay.
hire the sales people. We were smart people, so we hired bottom up. Okay, because we were like the tech thing, like the developer. You don't hire a VP engineer before having a first developer, right? That is
Right.
now it works with tech. But in here, what will happen is that you hire four FOs. You will not respect you because it's like the connection is not there. So you have to have the leader first who's going to manage your feet on street agents, have the right hierarchies in place. So
Interesting.
that is one mistake, but we did not do go over there. So what we did was, which is actually also very feasible, that to experiment it, we basically hired the first two three agents and somebody from our founding team basically managed them. So that is very important. So if you're hiring the first people, I would always say not have the leadership in the first four, at least first seven experiment or a pilot in at least one city with at least one agent, but ensure either the founders are doing it or the founding team is doing it. Because ultimately, see, as a startup, so as we are very very early, right? So as a startup is still finding product market fit, a sales guy will not solve basically PMF for you, right?
Yeah.
He'll basically come and basically copy paste the process, scale training, scale people, but you have to find it. So you have to see that to do the question, what is the sales pitch going to be like? What are shops are going to target? How we have to go. So the first few sales run, that has to come from the core team or the founders specifically. That's I was always recommend. What the mistake we did was that after the first two, three people, we basically scaled to 5, 10 people without a leadership in place. And that's what things started working. That, when we could, because the sales team were basically, the founding team had other things as well. So they couldn't hire 10 people. And then they like, let's do the reverse thing. So we had the leadership first and then they scaled the team. And basically we were struggling for like months. So like basically for the first 3, 4 months, our numbers were between 5 and 10 salespeople because we were not able to hire the people who hired. They were just leaving
Right.
after a month. There was churn, a lot of churn. But once the sales leadership ran, we basically double, triple every month. And so I think opposite Zorp download showed that as well. So yeah, so we basically did that. Yeah, so that is what. But the initial, I would say, always start with somebody from the founders and founding team as an experiment. And once you believe the numbers are good, it will help your business. And it's not CAC is not. We'll talk about unicorns later as well. So CAC is not the only difference. It's also about what. So in our model, is a lot of upselling and cross selling, and
Mhm.
doing that with digital is a little painful. But when you have a relationship with the doing that is slightly easier on that end. So that is also one aspect that you have to think. Okay, once you have to like make money out of that. But all of as I said, first step is basically experiment. Find somebody from the founders or founding team who can do it, and then probably hire a leader and then scale out. That would be my role. But
Okay.
obviously, everybody likes to mix it. But we made a mistake. We basically hired one, and we struggled for 3, 4 months because of that.
Makes sense. Now, the question on the leader, like when you say leader, is he somebody like a VP of sales, or am I looking at like an immediate manager, sales manager who manages only those people?
So see, it depends on what confidence you have on your product and what kind of product market fit and what's your next 3 month plan that you have. So if
Okay.
you're like looking in the next 3 months, I want to get to 10 people, then
Mhm.
you basically hire not a VP of sales is not required for 10 people. Then you basically hire not really immediate manager, but somebody like a regional manager who's hired like somewhere. So just whatever number you're looking at, just do a 2, 3x of that. So this somebody who's hired 20 to 50 people, you hire that person for a 10 people team.
Okay.
Because you eventually grow it somewhere around that kind of works. But the important thing is that even at that level, what we found was that if you find an immediate manager, he can manage those people, but the founder or funding team has to be involved in that case also
Yeah.
because they did, as I said, they're going to set payment. VP in, if you have the budget and if you have the confidence of product that you're going to scale, is what I would suggest because these are the people who can actually design the processes, build up the team. Basically the bottom line is basically good at scaling a team, training them, repetitive sales, following up and all that. But if you want to somebody who can build sales processes, builds the sales pipeline, it's always better to go for a director or a senior level person. So it depends on how much basically how much the founding team. And I saw the difference myself because basically we have a head of sales on a VP level. He joined us at notice. We joined us 2 3 months late, and during 2 3 months, basically my time spent on sales and versus that, well, there's a sea of difference, and obviously difference in performance. So it it depends on basically how much you want to scale your sales team, what kind of premium you have, because it can be expensive as well. If you've got a VP of sales, there's no point giving just 10 agents, right? You have
Yeah,
to like give him at least 50 plus agents. But if you're going to that point, that to ensure that the product is actually selling that kind of salary. So it depends on what the case is. So I think that is why I said the founding team has to be involved initially, and then after that, once you're like, yeah, I want to scale it, do it. Because with this immediate management and all that, you're going to have to be involved. Like, you cannot leave it them to be, the career. That is a problem, unfortunately.
makes sense. I mean, like each of these topics we can actually talk for hours, but we have to.
Yes, yes, yes.
I,
Every stage is different, basically. I think so. You have a basic early stage. How do you use a founding team to do the PMF? Because that's very experimental kind of thing, which you generally have to go with the agent and see every shop for yourself. The next stage is how do you get the initial 5 10, and then is how to get a VP and then get it. So every stage has own, I think, nitty gritties. Yep.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Interesting. And now let's talk about like the first leadership hire, right? Like for you, you have a feet on street. It's basically high value, high volume, high touch, like a close monitoring of these sales teams, different from like the typical B2B sales, right? So what kind of qualities did you look for when you hired your first sales leader, and how did you go about?
So on the sales data front, see, you have to figure out what kind of a sale that is going to happen on fit on street. So, for example, one of the classic mistakes that I've seen people do is that they think, a fit on street will hire somebody who put a QR code on basically Paytm kind of a thing. Okay, no offense to those people, but the thing is that that is not exactly a sale. That is basically more of an operation thing where you go and you put a sticker because it's like, okay, sticker, got it.
Yeah,
But then you have
yeah,
to, if you could look at things like insurance, things like credit cards, things like maybe even FMCG, where they actually have to convince a person take money out of it. And India might have the same way we convince people to basically pull ads. So that is actually a sale. So you have to
yeah,
understand that you basically need more of an operations or just getting it done, or do you want actually to convince the people? And obviously, product has to be good. It should not be a very very tough product. So from
yeah,
that, you have to understand what kind of sales you have to understand what kind of sales people are. Then that's how it will flow. The kind of sales leader you're going to hire, the hierarchy, and so on and so forth. So I think the first is like figuring, because as I said, the PMF question is like figure out how the sale is going to run. So once you figure out how if you can get 10 shops, 50 shops, 100 shops yourself, you can get 100 to 1,000 simple. But you have to figure out what, and then you have to see a sales data is going to fit in that kind of, who first agrees with that kind of a mold and is going to fit with it. If you're getting somebody who has done a very different kind of sale or somebody, and it also depends. Say, for example, let's say if we are acquiring pharmacies and we basically were looking mostly with people who had done it with small agencies. But if somebody is fit on street with only large enterprises, he would not be at that kind of fit because they require a different skill set. There's a lot of followers versus a pharmacy. We just go into a shop and do it. So ours is more of a more number of basically steps per day. Whereas I think if you go to a large, they just meet two people a day, which is going to
yeah,
not really work for our case,
exactly.
right? So that you have to figure out okay, how many steps per day you have to look, what kind of rate. So that is how you figure out the data. But that said, I think, see, honestly, in India, you cannot be very nitpicky. Okay, so they're not like hundreds of people waiting for you who are going to have skill set. Ultimately, you have to see who fits. You have to see is the person willing to learn and willing to do it your way, and then you have to take a bet on that person. So honestly, you cannot be sticky. But then again, there is a filtering risk. Okay, if you have five checkpoints, if the person meets three, and you take a bet on two, and then because the hopes that it works out. That is how it is. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So this is an interesting, like on a personal level, right? One of
Mhm.
the things that I have faced trouble with hiring anybody as a leader is it's not just that we'll make a mistake. Making mistake is fine. That's something we can experiment. But the cost becomes very high because if you lose 3 months,
Mhm.
you have to find another person trained to get
And then
onboarded.
people, you
Yeah.
train him, and then basically they have a notice periods, and you
Yeah.
convince them. So it's like a
Very
whole
easy.
other problem.
6 months cost, 6 months of business actually stagnating if you do one wrong hire. That's kind of what I've always struggled with.
And actually, the problem is that when you hire a VP of sales or something leadership level, and if he has hired the team, taking 90% case, you have to like let go of the whole team, and that is actually what makes it even worse. That because the other people who came for the leaders, not most of them will leave, and that is what actually happens also. Whenever you see senior leadership leave, they take a few people along with them, or a few people leave the organization. So that is there. So that is why I think more than capability, I believe the culture fit, mission fit, and that is slightly more important than will be. If I have found a person who's a better culture mission fit, who's willing to learn rather than a fit, I'll take the culture fit one. That is what we're going with. And then
Okay.
obviously luck is always there. Yeah.
I know.
Well,
I
obviously
get.
I have not hired somebody from operations, so that is a bridge too far. But if somebody has done sales, somebody is willing to learn and better fit, I'll take him then a better sales fit per se.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay. Nice. Cool. So let's move on to the next thing, right? Like now we have
Yep.
hired a salesperson. We have like the basic team actually set up, and let's say the product, you're getting some feedback, you're making adjustments to the product. It's kind of like evolving. Now you want to start scaling this particular team. Okay.
Mhm.
So scaling is not just like hiring more people.
Mhm.
There's like process, there is training, there is a lot of things. I'm sure. I'm sure you can add more that actually goes
Lot
in.
incentives I believe are the most important, honestly. Here.
Yeah. Just talk about the whole thing. How
Sure.
does it?
So once you basically, as I said, as a founding team, you figure out your first 100, 200, whatever shop. Now to say you have to get 10,000, you make a plan. Now, if that the first thing that to figure out, I think in the sales structure is that what is the hierarchy going to be? Okay. So hierarchy basically it's like if for every agents you have an immediate manager. He may be in the city or maybe handling at max two cities, not more than that. He's a person who has a daily kind of a FaceTime, at least weekly, multiple time FaceTime with them, and then the multiple cities will have a regional manager, and then hierarchy above that depends on how many people you have, something
Okay.
like that. So then you have to work out the based on the CAC economy, you have to work out what ratios fit for you essentially, because the CAC is essentially here is the marketing, right? It's like salaries on top of salaries on top of salaries. So like you have to see. So basically, it's a very delicate balance between if you have one manager has like 20 agents, he's not going to be a good manager. But if
Exactly.
your one manager is like five, or let's say only two agents, the CAC is going to be very high.
Yeah.
So it's a very delicate balance. Ki how do you basically get the right number of managers and don't screw up your CAC? So that is getting. So that is where a sales leader comes in. So if you're going to experiment it and getting it right, honestly, it'll take very very long. What I'm seeing. But if you have no sales leader done basically with a certain structure, then I think it becomes that problem became easier for us. That we said we will go with the structure. This generally works. And in term, we did some CAC calculations that if we reach these many shops, basically the CAC will work out, and that is how basically the math work out. This is a CAC. This is a structure I have worked with before. This work, and using this structure per effort, we need this much in productivity so that the CAC sets up. That is how the basically funnel works, and then you see that it works. So for example, I don't know if I do what building scratch. I don't know that for a line manager is four enough, it's five enough, it's 10 enough. But
Yeah.
person who done this before, he has basically made those mistakes already. So I'm like, I don't know to make mistakes that already been made. I just take some learnings from them. Obviously, there will be some tuning, but if the structures work before, it will mostly work again.
Mm.
So that is one. And then from there, you then back calculate from the CAC and all that. So that is step one. Now the thing is, okay, on abhi to we're still on paper. We haven't
Yeah.
done anything yet. So now the paper is okay, you build this hierarchy. And I said now the part comes, you have to hire top down. And the best thing to happen is whenever you hire top downs, you hire the regional managers or city managers over here, ask them to get people along with. Okay.
Yeah.
So that is actually the best hack you can get. In fact, I would say, in fact, I think in the next set of data, we're going to put a criteria that boss, if you're coming, bring at least 4 or 5 people with you.
Yeah.
So that filters for two things. A, like people really want to work with you, and B, it's also for hiring. And C, because they already have a team set, there's no risk of basically the manager to
Right.
because it's already a team that you got in, right? So the next step would be that hire top down, ask them to bring a managers, but whatever is not there, so that is one level, and then obviously there will be some vacancies. And with the vacancy, then you have to figure out that what is the kind of profile you're looking for. As I said, like Phone Pay, Google Pay is one. Then you have a lot of startups like Udan, Misho, who did. Then you have FMC traditional ones, FMCG ones. Then you have to basically mix and match with the person. So at this point, because it's early, we don't do freshers.
Okay.
And our reason simply for doing that is that I think it's not a good thing to say, but a lot of startups have done layoffs. So you have state agents available at this point for our number of people. But eventually, once we want to hire, when we are in the growth stage and we don't have people left to essentially acquire, and at that point we'll take a call. Okay, we have to train them ourselves from the ground up because it's a very tedious process to figure out who's going to do sales. But a person has done sales, earned incentive at one of the companies, it becomes a much safer bet essentially.
Okay.
So yeah, that is how you figure out what is your ideal work. Take three, four, hire them, then basically, but hire obvious top down. So you have to regional players, you have to see managing more, and that is how month on month you keep on scaling it. But you have to be very diligent on your performance and CAC numbers. That this is the CAC I want. Initially, the CAC will be bad because you've hired a leader, but you haven't filled up his team. So the
Yeah.
ratios will be bad to start with. Plus, generally, agent takes a few depends on the business. He will not be very efficient in the first month itself. You have to give
Yeah.
that leeway. If first month okay, you hit half your target, it's okay, and then you have to keep on scaling it. So, but you have to ensure like in 2 3 months it will basically move on. That is, how you kind of take the sale. Obviously, if you have a sales leader in place, it will happen. But if you're going to do it yourself, it will take some time. I would say I'm looking at least 6 months plus, honestly. So that is why I always suggest to get something who's done this before and who has done the battles. Obviously, then you optimize for what is going to be your incentive, your pitch. You just have to plug it in. But what is already done regarding the hiring, training, and all that, it's better to use knowledge that is already there in the system. Because as a startup, the only thing that you have, you understand is speed. Like I think I just saw like you release 4 products in 4 weeks, right? Week one, week two, week three, four. So you
Yeah.
understand how
Yeah.
important speed is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I answered the question, right? Well,
You did. You
correctly.
did.
Yeah.
You
So
did.
yeah, but at the stage we are, I think we are okay with not going for freshers. But eventually, I think once we hit the growth stage, maybe we'll look into it.
Yeah.
But I think at that point, we are more importantly, we are like how to pitch it, where to place your aid. So basically, there's a lot of geographical. So why do you have to get a leadership himself? Because he knows the geography very well. So, for example, I'm in Bangalore. I was born in Punjab. I know basically these two places. But I've said, how do you basically expand in Gujarat? I have like no clue. But a person who has basically done it in Gujarat in insurance or FMCG company, who knows basically everything outskirts, inskirts, how many shops are there, that person will have a much better idea and he will tell you, okay, this place the market is good, so we'll get a few efforts here and like that. And why? But I think the most important is also about trust here as well. That ultimately you cannot micromanage a lot. So basically, ultimately you have to have good people and you have to trust them to make the right decisions. As with all things, one of the problems that I think generally see with sales is like a people, because as I said, reluctantly people want to do the sexy online digital sales. They don't really sales truck. They rely on like a sales team. They don't trust them. They don't give them resources to basically don't. But I was only like, if you want to go to hire a sales team, you go all in, and that's why our sales team, like I think I'm being whatever. So all our sales leaders were, they say we have never gotten this much support on company in all the previous companies that we worked. Because like we were like all in and we are going in. Essentially, that is how we give them support and all that. So that is how essentially works. We give them support. They're like more. I don't think okay, we'll do something for the company.
So, I mean, I just want to double click on this. You said that, hey, compared to other companies, you offer like better support and you kind of like take care of them well, right? Talk about a couple of practicalities on how you implemented that culture.
Yes, yes. So when we support is, so number one support that we give is in the form of data. So the data first start from leads. So they give basically we have out of all the pharmacies we have a lot of data, and this has been scraped from various websites on Earth. I can say it on here, but you guys can understand. Like Google Maps is a good source where you
Yeah.
can basically get list of pharmacies. We were lucky in that sense because pharmacy generally list on Google Maps, and from there you can get approximate phone number, locations of pharmacies. So those are already available. So you're not going in blind in a city essentially. So first support we in the leads. Then we give a lot of tracking. So I think Zorp was basically instrumental there. Where basically we used to track, what happened. So with the sales agent, one thing was we don't say you have to sell, do it. We say either you get the software done or you get to know why it doesn't want to, basically not use it. And he records the reason. This is the reason boss are not able to make the sale. And what we do is every month we check the feedback and we see the top reason why this is not happening. And
Mm.
basis on that reason, we basically ship that product and say, okay, now go to these people. So it's kind of a sales CRM kind of a thing that we have built.
So yeah, just this kind of like underrated. You didn't explicitly call it out, but the thing I find it interesting, even from the beginning CAC conversation we had, is that it's not just like, hey, you have a sales team, you have to sell this product, like go sell. Let's see how many you actually hit. But it is more of how do you enable your sales team across the entire life cycle to kind of assist and do make them do better.
Exactly, because see, we're not a PM, we're not like a sabun. Yeah, it's you're going to Sabon well, there's no innovation, right? Like I'm not selling Sabon. I'm selling something which I don't know is works or not. So I
Yeah,
cannot say ki you have to sell it. You say you sell it, or you
yeah,
figure out why is it not selling. Tell me. Okay. Obviously,
yeah,
I won't say we get very good quality data. Some people they say not interested. They don't give any reason. But the
yeah.
people who diligence who do, we just have to stack rank them, right? Obviously,
Correct.
which is the biggest reason is coming at multiple geographies, multiple people, and we ship it out and we say, okay, these are the leads that said this. Now just go ahead and go for them kind of a
Yeah.
thing, and they do follow up. So that is, you do have any question here? There are a few more things as well. I'll just cover after.
Yeah, no, so the one thing I wanted to highlight is like we had a conversation before, and that was in operations, right? So in the previous session, and one of the things that one of the operations leader highlighted is when we implement a technology solution and we provide it to the operations team, it is always from the lens of I want to track you better. I want to know
Uh,
what you actually do. I want to know how
mm,
much you've actually done, whether you are utilizing your time properly, whether you are resting. So that's a lens typically people sitting in the office actually see these things.
mm,
But he said one of the ways that we fail to do is how do we need to tell them that the whatever I am providing is going to make you do your job better.
mm.
It's going to make your life easier. It's going to improve your conversion easier. It's going to improve your interactions easier. It's going to assist you with all the things that you need to convert this particular sale.
Correct,
Right?
correct.
The same feeling is what I'm actually getting over here.
Correct, correct. See, we don't do a very great job at that, honestly. A lot of people do think that we are tracking them because see, it's everybody makes music. And it's like even if the leadership says this is the role, what happens is sometimes the leaders at some point will not communicate this. Okay?
Yeah.
Because when you have a large sales team, the most important thing communicating from top to down. That is becomes more of a challenge than anything else. And we are facing issues that with doing pains we keep on करके. But yes, so you have to tell them, but and there will always be bad players. So there will be people who don't want to really work and they will not appreciate all this because they're like there's some we had some people who wanted to do two jobs simultaneously. Like we'll work for PhonePe and we'll work for you. So we're like, no boss, this is not happening here. But that is where the incentives come in. That we say these are the numbers you have to hit to get this much incentive. And he said, your boss, the job of the boss is how do you incentive? He looks at the data you've done, looks at the lead and say, this is the pipeline funnel. This is how if you do this is how you reach your targets. That is how
Mm.
the conversation begins. Then we say, okay, I'm not able to do it because I get this decision. So then they have a feedback. So we have a monthly feedback session with them where they tell their top problem they're facing and we ship most of the things. So most of the things that we have built at Medbikri has been from the sales and the customer support feedback. Sales feedback more per se. Because
Got
then
it.
they basically then the initial months they have some ki ye bola tha. Then we are like ki, okay, we have shipped this now. Just go and ask them. And then they're like, so some agents who are not able to do it, they just leave the system. Who do it. They're very very happy. That
Okay.
is how you do it. So that is I think the numbers to support that you give. Third, we have because we have built this facing one, we have a backend support of data as well. So whatever happened, the RMs every hour, in fact, every hour they can see what is happening or repeat of situation. So for example, if the person is not working for the last hour, the RM will get to know, regional manager and all that. Now, what we do with the data is a different thing, but we have access. So that is how we support them. So, and these are two, three, and three. Obviously, we have good incentives. करके we basically give them. We don't give you can say industry based salaries, even decent salaries, but we have incentive package is basically uncapped. So basically,
Okay.
people can earn more than the salaries and incentives if done right. And we that is, I think, how the support that we get. So even I say everybody says कि मतलब इतना सब मेरे को मिल जाता पिछली company में, तो I would have done much better. That
Yeah.
is what it is. But yeah, that's all about the support. And that support essentially comes from when you're actually all in with the sales. Like if you believe that sales is going to be way and you have to ensure that sales are going to be efficient, that's only when we'll do it because 90% of what happens is sales is like it's a necessary evil. That is how most people look at it. You need it to feed the company, but you don't like it. And because that has happened, like if you go to a tech and see build something for the sales, they were like, nah, we're not doing anything for them. But here we basically kind of help them how we can help them to keep on doing that. Because we really there's an all in at the company level, which is actually important.
Yeah, yeah. The reason why I'm actually smiling is that I come from a technology background, and right now I'm doing sales. I can understand like both the perspectives.
Yes, product manager myself. So yeah, so I got humbled when I got as a senior product manager for sales. So then I understood okay, how it is like difficult and easy to get things done here. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It's a different ball game. I hope that people, tech folks, are actually listening to this. Probably will have one session about how folks see sales operations, etc.
yeah,
From
yeah,
that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
touched upon a couple of things I want to talk about, right? One is the incentive planning. Okay. I'm sure we can talk about that for us.
And I'll keep it short. Yeah.
But probably we'll do a second session on this. But let's try to understand like how do you what are the the principles of how do you structure a good incentive program? What are things we should actually pay attention to?
So incentive has two parts. One is the metrics and that the salesperson has to hit, and other is how much money you are going to throw at it. Okay,
Okay.
that is that how much basically money systematically is going to go at it. Okay. For the second part, I think we basically like a lot of people give fixed salaries. We basically don't really believe we give fixed salaries, but they're not usually the highest at the number. We give middling market size or even sometimes less. But we have very good incentive plan. So the thing is because in our case, basically we say कि as because we are in a CAC kind of business, and a person we keep it uncapped because some people so there are two ways to optimize CAC. One is you have to enable the high end or you have to disable the low end, right? So we basically focus कि the person who's doing well, you have to enable doing 200%. How do you enable them to go to 300%? That is why we're practically unlimited kind of scenario because we understand that a person because our metric is capped initially because we're not eventually will change to revenue and maybe the things will change. But when your metric is actually how to acquire at a good price, it's capped. So you will then realize that a person who is basically even if he's getting more than his salary incentive, but the number of shops that he needs to activate to get there, the CAC will actually come down
Yeah.
essentially. Yeah. So basically, I think that we have to like enable your best people to do more and more better. For example, I've seen a lot of companies who are stingy on incentives. What happens is the best people do they maybe 120% of the target, and then they keep the leads for the next month because
Uh,
you don't have it. So in our case, it's what happens if you're going to keep 150.
uh, the incentives are capped in that case mostly. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So in our case, what happens is like if you go to 200%, 150%, the amount of money you get is actually insane. So you're like, well, I'd rather go to 150 rather than just stop there. That is how we basically the incentives step up and it keeps on increasing with every percentage. So basically, the people are like, oh, more and more, more and more, that kind of a scenario. So that is how and basically on the bottom side, we're also very efficient there as well. So basically, we do very fast PIP plans. We have an attendance criteria. So agent, if it's not doing required of work, we basically don't give him the full salary because it's like
Okay.
that end as well. So basically, we more like efficient on the bottom end and basically keep it scaling on the top end. So that is how you basically okay. We do both technically. So that is how you generally control it. But the main criteria is that it has to be a very good number, which is like at that point you can say if you do very well, you'll make more than your salary. If that
Ah,
is what you can say, that then I think there's no nothing underneath.
got it.
Another first part is more basically interesting. How to decide the metrics. The
Ah,
thing is that one of the biggest problems in sales is basically fraud. Okay, so if you build the wrong metric, they'll optimize for that, but you don't get everything out of the company level. So
yeah.
I've seen like for example, there were some people who were ordering on the first order, and they were giving a discount. Okay, on the first order. So what used to happen was they just got the first order. They say it's a discount, just take it, and there was no basically retention after that.
Yeah.
And then they realized, okay, because this was giving a first order discount, what they were doing is they just bought SIMs themselves, and from fake SIM they were doing that. Okay, that is what we do because that's how you design the incentive. And then
Yes.
they say, okay, now we're focused on retention. And what were the SIMs that were dormant? We use that and just cultivated it. So I think the most important thing is you have to figure out that if this happens, will your company go up or not? Will it tie into the North Star? That is also, for example, initially we focused on acquisitions. Okay, what we love is acquisitions. They will, what if you tell them acquisition, they'll go acquisition, but they will not teach them. They say, install kalo, then I'm done.
Ah,
That is the
correct.
kind of thing because these you're not expect these people to care for a company. I'm sorry, but they will care for incentives that moves, and they'll find the least efficient way to hit that number. That is what they're basically essentially good at. So if you have acquisition, they'll try to convince them to get install the application or basically whatever the platform, sign in the platform, whatever. But they will not teach them even an iota more if it takes more time.
Yeah.
So that is how it's going to. Even though that hurts as a whole, but that is the on the ground too.
Right. Yeah.
So if you choose a metric and basically you send it just by doing the metric, if it doesn't help your company, then it's bad. So you will not obviously figure out first time. We basically at our company we change basically the longest we have the same metrics basically 2 3 months. Okay, we change it every month because it's still in a figuring out phase. So because we now we're moving from pure acquisition to monetization, the incentives are changing like that in that direction. So we see acquisition, then we move to activation, and we change our activation metric also 2 3 times because then we found out the activation what we were expecting. Like for example, we said we do X number of transactions. So, and we thought the X amount of transactions will happen over a few days, but they were just two happening in 1 hour, and that didn't help us. And then we were okay, you have to use it for 3 days at least with X number of transactions. Then we started seeing something, and then we were saying there's some people who were not doing that usage, they were not scaling a bit. And then we were like, we'll basically not give a lot here, but we'll increase the more on the daily usage, basically people who use it daily. So it's more of mix and play, but you have to ensure that this ties somewhere in the North Star, and B, because every company, I think, regardless of the shape, you will need retention or more. So if your goal is just revenue, then it's simpler that you just get a deal and you're done.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
simpler. But if your goals are slightly more complicated, you want regular usage or stuff like that, then you have to figure out with their metric how to get regular usage and give them an incentive and a number. Okay, and you have to track it accordingly. So if you don't track the number, you can't do it. So you have to give them metric, which is so the metric will not be 100%, but even if it's like 95%, with a good, decent anti-fraud kind of method, you will basically do well. But yeah, it is like in a progress. Even we are this is struggling. We change it every month or so. Okay, but it's more of, you can say, art and science and practicality. And this is not something that any VP sales will bring it from somewhere else. He will tell you the criteria for. So, for example, we have there's different ways of giving incentives. Right? So we basically have a monthly incentive, which is a regular one, and sometimes we bring in schemes as well. So if we want to get something done during the month, we'll give a 10-day special offer. If you this particular, get this much money, that kind of a thing. So they can tell the frameworks in which you can get incentives, but what the metric should be, I think you should spend the most number of time on that.
makes sense.
Mm.
Now, I mean, when I think about it, when you said like you change the incentives almost on a monthly basis, don't you get any pushback from the sales team because they have to?
So see, we always tell them ki, so with, the first thing we say is, see, we want the best for basically the pharmacies that they use it regularly. Okay, and we tell them ki, see, we're going with this metric because if I just put a daily run, so you not nobody can incentive. We'll give this metric because this if you get this done, it's a proxy. Now, if you do that well, let's say if you like, for example, if you do, let's say we use it 3 4 days, a person who teaches them well, they will see a natural percentage using it daily. But whereas a person who doesn't sell it that well, you'll see his retention numbers will be low. That are very clearly visible. So we'll say, okay, we want to get this done. If you do this nicely, then you'll get this done. We're happy with the retention number. If you don't, we'll take some action. And after a few months, we see that the retention are not as good as we wanted. So we say, see, if they're not as good as we wanted, this means you are gaming the system some ways. So now we have
Yeah,
to put an incentive there as well. So, but that said, you will find some bad actors. Basically, the five. So in sales, there will be always, I think, less than 20% attrition. You cannot go honestly. There will always be 5-10% people who will. So at one point, when we didn't have a sales leader, our attrition was 80% on a monthly basis. Now it's basically less than 10-20%. But I don't think you can get it below that. It's very, very tough, essentially. But it's very tough for an organization doing well. If your organization that's just posting, then probably you would have 100% attention because you're giving incentives every day. But see, ultimately, like hyper growth comes at a cost, and
yeah,
you'll find people. I mean, you've seen our numbers, right? So if you're going to find some people who don't want to work at that pace, and you have to churn some of it. So we churn for performance or PIP-related reasons only. The good people who are running incentive, they don't really leave us because the incentive is so high.
yeah,
And so one of the things I think which is very important to understand here is that in terms of freelance agents, the salaries are very similar all across. It's the incentive that matters. So they always try to find a company where they're going to meet incentive at a monthly basis because that is actually where the delta comes in. Because the salaries anywhere you take basically a field agent salary, you take a delivery boy salary, you take operation salary. It is very similar. But the incentive they get away is basically what essentially the delta is. So they
yeah.
try to find a company where the probability of making incentive is high. And once you do that, they tend to stick with it because they know if they shift companies, even though they'll get a salary bump, but if they're not making the incentive, at the end of the day, they're not getting that much money home. So that is, I think, how we generally do it. You should give incentives.
Interesting.
There should be good ones. That then the best people stay, and the best people are basically who. It's like a Pareto there as well. The best people are going to drive a lot of it, and they're kind of the bar raisers for a company as well. So
Nice.
that is it. But yeah, the metric is, I think, is the most important incentive to figure out. And say, I think even then the hiring and all that can be basically outsourced. Somebody can help you. But there's not. This is something you have to figure out by yourself at the end of the day. Yes.
Now, let's say I did figure out the metrics, but there is one more thing I'm thinking is even if I figure out the metrics, what is a target I should actually set for the company? Because if I set too high, nobody's going to achieve, and they're going to get demotivated.
So see, you have to how it generally works is I think this was a hack told by our sales leaders that
Ah,
whatever the company is looking at, you have to make give it a higher target to a lower and lower. So for example, the company is 3,000. The basically regional managers get 5,000, the FOs will get 6,000, like that. It keeps on
Okay.
increasing in every level, so that
Ah,
even let's say the FS was like 50% of it, you still reach the company level. That is how I do it. So I don't really believe so. Because a lot of companies, what happens is there's the feet on seat agent, they don't make incentives, but the leadership makes because of that reason. And
ah,
I basically put a slaughter there, but we still have some version of that. That basically everybody that it reduces a little. Basically, obviously, not all agents will be productive, right? The agents productive, you have like at 3 or 4 agents productive, you should be getting there, that kind of a scenario. So that is there. So you have to design it like that. First of all, okay, so that if because there's a higher target at bottom, you have to do it, and then you actually have to plan. So, for example, as you said, the target is too high. Now the thing is that you have to prove that the target is not too high. For example, let's say per agent, if you don't have a single agent who can do that much productivity, then to you're dreaming.
yeah.
Okay. But
Yeah.
if you have, let's say, 5-10 agents who do that, and you say, okay, I'm expecting 80% of this on the whole team level, that is still fine, basically. I would still say higher, but still you can say the borderline thinking, okay, these are 10 people who do that, who do 200%. Okay. I'm asking you to do 80%, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of a thing. And then basically you keep on churning the bad people, or basically then you keep them, or you're like, okay, you draw a line somewhere. Okay, what is the
Got
kind of mini performance that I accept, that I'm going to go ahead with?
it. Okay.
That's
So
okay. But you have to be, if you want to hyper go, you have to be aggressive. And
yeah.
that is also basically a lot of people don't join us for the same reason. So I remember like people like basically accept offer letter to joining ratio like less than 50%. Because when they realize okay, but then it's a volume game. So if you want 20 people, you give 40 offers because we know that's going to happen.
Okay.
There you
So is this also something you look at like on a monthly? You improve it, increase it on a monthly basis if the efficiency has gone up,
we basically it depends on the metrics. So let's say we're happy. So sometimes we have multiple metrics as well
right?
for the same thing, 2, 3. So if they one done well, we keep it for 1 month and we'll either improve it the next month or we introduce another metric along with it. So for example, it's like activation plus like daily usage per se plus retention, something like that. So we either do it a double one, but yeah, the overall the productivity has been increasing. So like I think for the past few months, we basically the rate of change of productivity is actually higher than the way we are growing a sales team. So we
Okay.
keep on increasing because it's like as long as sales team believes this can be achieved, you can keep on bumping it up
Okay.
essentially. And
Okay.
this is where I think this is where because see the feet on seat there'll be attrition, so you can't really depend on them. It's your leaders who are going to matter here. So your sales leaders, your regional leaders, your even the city managers, if they believe they can get it done, basically they will get it done. And you have to prove them, okay, okay, see, this is how it is done. You have to show them data. So that is where the tracking and the support and all that comes into play. The support is there,
Nice.
you can get it this done. Yeah, so it's all connected. एक तरह से. Like you
Yeah.
don't do some make a mistake there, the whole wheel breaks essentially.
Correct.
You don't give them
Correct.
support, you cannot expect that much of a performance.
Yeah. Nice. So, I mean, there is one small topic again in the sales operations. I mean, the sales process I want to cover, right? So, which is the handling frauds.
Mm.
Uh, Especially
Yeah.
when you have such a large team and you are growing at the pace that you are actually growing, I'm sure there are plenty of people trying to figure out a way to game the system. So, how do you handle that? How has that experience been? Talk to support it.
But obviously, experience has not been good, but it is something. It is part and parcel. So what we do
Right.
is the first thing is that it starts on a metric. If your metric is something which cannot be gamed, like for example, if you have a metric, they have to make a transaction, okay,
Right.
and if there's some way where the transaction value is actually less than the incentive you're giving, it is going to be gamed. Because that
Yeah.
is you're asking. I should not use it, but you're asking for it. Okay, so that is what you start. You have to ensure how your metric is, and then, for example, instead of giving out a first order, you should give it a first fulfilled order without return. Just to give you an example, okay. That is so you are basically, for example, let's say you instead of giving the first order, give it the first order and then the second repeat order, kind of a thing. So you basically go, as I said, the acquisition, the activation. So go a little deeper in the chain. So from we are sure, okay, this is not something we do. The shopkeeper is some involved at that point in time. So you have to first of all set your metric that way. Even when whatever you do, there will be some fraud. So you basically have to have an analytics team. So we have a central sales team for this, who basically use job as incentives, giving HR, hiring agencies, and all that. So they basically like on a daily basis, we ask the leaders that whenever we check the performance, check the last day's performance. And because we have such tracking in place, essentially, we basically, so for example, we ask them for latitude, longitude for the shops. We ask them their photographs of the shop. That is part of the basic tracking that we have. So if you're
Yeah.
not going to a shop, you will not get a photograph, right?
Yeah.
You cannot get a latitude, longitude. So we have all that. And sometimes we basically see that one person has made basically visit 10 shops in the span of 5 minutes. And you understand, this is not humanly possible unless you're Superman
Yeah.
or you're Captain America. That's not happening. But that you didn't spend time on pitching anyway, right? So that is the kind of metrics we see. Ki, these are the reports. We see this, and then we see so. And then we're very diligent. So we have a zero tolerance policy, and we have like three, like basically one strike we deduct as your salary, two strike we deduct a larger part, third strike you're out.
And
So people know.
for the strikes, do you ask for a justification, or is your call the final call?
No, no, we ask for a justification, okay, how this happened, but 95% of the time there's no answer to that. Essentially, we say, okay, why this? Because we are metric so. Like for example, you cannot visit 10 stores in 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
That is there. You cannot basically do all your touch, all your basically longitude cannot be at your house. So that is what happened. 1% had all ordered from his house. He never went to the market. So we saw that our number we took a kilometer distance travel. It was less than 500 meters because everything was from his house. So because we track it very digitally, what we do and what we said, and we also have a cross team. So sometimes what happens, we do some random calling in terms of the customers from Peter in the central team. So it's okay to see if there's something fishy there or not. And we also have some compliance. For example, in our case, basically we have chemist shops. So to get an incentive, we ask for a KYC. Okay. So like one of these things, instead of getting a chemist, can you get a customer and get it done, right? So basically, in the chemist shop, the level lucky that we have say drug license requirement to open a
Okay.
chemist shop, and other shops have basically FSSAI license, some kind of a license required. So that way, basically covered. Okay, okay, he's getting pharmacies to the store. He's not getting any random,
Ah,
basically person to the store. So that's where the metric comes in. So we don't pay unless KYC verified. That is a policy here. So that is because it's KYC verified. For example, if you're doing enterprises, you can always ask for a GST number of the company,
yeah.
stuff like
Yeah.
that. So that you can verify, okay, this is not like an individual who's onboarding. So like fraud is multiple levels. First, if the fraud is like getting your friends to get it done, so we've covered that. The next level is how do you not work by doing any work? How do you do that? And eventually, it's like a performance thing. So after all that, what happens is we have 3, 4 checks. Then basically we are very diligent with firing them, and that's what we're doing. And the third is like if even if you're smart to cover all of this, if you're not performing, we have a PIP program. So these people basically will at max if they're performing and doing a fraud, then you're excellent. But then it doesn't matter, right? If he's hitting your CAC numbers, that would
Mhm.
be a problem, right? So
Yeah.
I would say that a lot of people would be doing like maybe 10% karke, but overall if it's setting a number, that is fine. But the people who don't do it, they basically then are outside the system in 2, 3 months. That is strategy. So it's like all things. You cut it out them using the metrics, you follow up diligently, and at the end of the day, they're not performing, they go. So that is how we do it. So yeah, a lot of learnings there. I think it's a more of a not, but you have to be very because if you're not up there, you're going to get screwed with.
Yeah.
Very,
Yeah.
very big time.
Makes sense. Nice. Awesome. I just had a time check. Looks like we've been talking for a while. I didn't even
Correct, correct,
realize the time actually went by so fast. But
correct.
yeah, that kind of covers most of the points that I actually had. There is one audience question, if I may ask.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. I think you can ask audience for questions more as well. We have like 5 minutes. We can just cover it off. Yeah.
Yeah. So Aditya asks, how do you arrive at your convictions? What are some key mental models you use to be creative, solve problems, or make decisions?
How do you arrive at convictions? I think that's there's only one thing. You talk to your customers and you basically understand them behind, not just what they're saying. You have to understand the whys. For example, say I don't like this. I said, why don't you like this?
Hmm.
Then because I like it because of this. Okay, why this happened? So once and you talk like this is not weird. I have talked to like probably 500 plus people, pharmacy, even if not more. Even today, whenever there's something, what happens is the sale isn't go, and the pharmacist say I want to talk to the CEO of the company, and my number is open, and I
Ah,
still talk to them. That happens. So the conviction essentially comes from how confident are you in the space and your customers. And if your customers are happy in the space, everything else is noise. Okay.
yeah.
But I think it's for my side. It's also like I sometimes tend to you can say over in it. But as an entrepreneur, I think even Bala, you have to be a little crazy. So if I like do a pros and cons or like analysis like that, I will never do what I do basically because there are always more cons of
Yeah.
not doing it, getting a cushy job, earning a good salary. They're not there. So sometimes you just have to believe in yourself, believe in your customer. That was the first part of it. Bala, can you repeat the second question? Second part of the question.
Yeah. So, what are some key mental models you use for being able to
For
solve problems, make decisions, etc.?
So I think that the basically for decisions we have a very simple model. I think there are 2, 3. It's about a that we optimize for speed. over everything else. Basically, don't optimize for basically building a full system because it's like you're going to experiment. What you're going to build now is not going to be relevant 3 months down the line. So
Yeah.
optimize for A, speed, and B, basically like I think it's a famous Amazon thing, one way, two-way doors. That's also part of the same. If you're one way door, don't think a lot, just go at it. To achieve all of this, you have to have a very fast shipping speed or experimentation speed. Shipping, if you're doing tech, if you don't tech, experimentation speed, that has to be very, very fast. So if you have that fast, then you can build this model. Obviously, if you're taking 6 months to do an experiment, it's not going to be a workout. Other than that, it's like very simple. Talk to your customers, build conviction. If enough of them have the same problem behind it, uh, go for the top problem and build it up. I think that is how it generally works. Apart from this, I think what I tell my team also is like early stage is very different. So this changes by stages. So I tell them, see, whatever I'm going to tell you now, na, is going to be rubbish 6 months down the line. Okay, because then what? Because like for example, at the start of it, what you built is doesn't really matter. Okay,
Yeah.
like as a startup, you're building a time, so you cannot be like careful of I built that much. Like if somebody asks me, okay, will you dump your product right now? Early stage basically, people say no, I will not dump off. And till a few months back, I was in that stage. Like if there's a reason that I have to dump the whole product, I will do it. If it's not working out, now basically I have more conviction. Now we have enough customers that will care for it. So now the things kind of change. So I think that probably covers it, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's brilliant, man.
Hmm.
Awesome. Cool. So, any other points that you want to add? Anything I've actually missed out that you want to cover?
I think mostly I just have one thing that a that figure out that where do you reach sales, and B, if you figure out, please go all in. Like don't treat
Right.
sales as something like a necessary evil. I think that
Yeah.
is the whole takeaway of it. If you like care for them and you think that sales is like I've seen companies who like even like edtech companies who work with sales as the bread and butter, and they're like, "Arey, काश customer खुद ही खरीद लेता है." Kind of a thing. But nobody has cracked that in India, right? At least for sales. So the
Yeah.
point is, if you don't treat them as a part of the culture, that is going to happen. They're not getting support from everybody, and they'll be like necessary evil. So I think that if you like treat them with a necessary part of your growth journey and go all in on that, and you have a company-wide standard of that, I think that will do. And that is what is missing actually in most companies to start with. They're like your sales team say, "Arega," but like sales team is necessary and
Yeah.
it's like a necessary evil, but it's not like okay, this is something like for example, they treat the tech team very well, but they do not treat the same sales team that well. They should be because it's
Yeah.
kind of an equal partnership at some places, right? So that is, I think, the whole over takeaway. Rest, I think that what we have touched upon are very very last topics. I think we can actually talk 1 hour each of on incentives, org structure, stuff like
We,
that.
we should do that sometime. Each
We
of
should
these
do that. I think
topics.
people, if they want to, some details on any one topic, we can have like a
Yeah.
single topic session, so that can happen. And I think the other is basically how much ever. So either if you have a founding team member who's good experience with sales, that's good. Otherwise, don't try to reinvent the wheel a lot. Except for a few things, just your product, your pitch, your incentives. Those three are something you have to figure out. There's nobody else. But how to hire, what is the hierarchy, the on the ground knowledge, I would suggest just hire people who have done this before. That will
Yeah.
basically increase your speed because I think speed is what is going to matter the most for you. So
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Awesome. Cool.
awesome.
Cool. That kind of concludes it. So I want to ask you any specific book, podcast recommendations that you would have.
Unfortunately, like I was in the same boat 6 8 months ago. That how do you scale? Basically a feet on seat teams. Everything you have is on SaaS. So if on SaaS, you have a lot of content like the VP, how to get the VP engineering. And like if you look at Jason Lemkin, he's written a Bible on it. How to
I
write a
know.
VP engineering. I was like, okay, India, how field sales? Nothing, man. Nothing I could find. Because that is, I think, one concern. And India is a land where field sales are actually very, very. If you look at all the traditional legacy businesses, everybody has grown using field sales. Even today, you have Byju's who's dependent has some field sales, and all the bigger startups, most of them do have field sales covering, but there's nobody who covers that. How do you get it done? Because the
Yeah.
nuances of handling a field sales is very, very different than your general tech startup, and it's very different from the SaaS callers as well. So
Yeah.
I couldn't honestly find much material. That is, I think, a pain of contention. You would
Yeah.
find some articles about how Paytm Bharat they did it, but they were more shallow. They didn't go into
Yeah.
execution and all that. So whatever I've gotten, honestly, it's gotten from talking to sales leaders. So I interviewed a lot of people while hiring for this role, and some of them I think were kind enough to tell me about experience. They rejected me for their reasons, but they told me this is how it works, and basically the knowledge comes from three, four of them I think three or four, five of them, where they share their perspective and all that. So that is how you. And then I think once you talk to like four, five people, you see there's some common thing behind everybody, and that's what you then kind of take home. Yeah. So I think if you want to do a podcast or something, I think like I would love to be a part of it or something. But there's
Ah,
not. Yeah.
actually, so each of the topics we covered, right? Probably we should do like a session, like overall course
Correct. Correct.
types out there, so that
I think we can invite a few more people as well. I think people have got to, then they can also, give their own pointers because I'm still a founder. I don't run the sales team per se. We can get people who, basically have more hands-on experience as well. So they will give even more insight than my perspective. Mine comes from a founder perspective. They would
yeah,
have more uh, other
yeah,
perspective as well. Yep, yep,
yeah,
yep.
let's do that. They should definitely do that. Awesome.
Correct, correct. I think there's also like one of the things is that there's no offense, but your sales lead is hiding something from you. Okay, so there's some things that are basically between the lower tail and they don't reach the hierarchy, which is again which I don't know, and I am aware of some of them, not all of them, obviously, but some of them. So that is why their perspective is also very important. How do you actually go
Yeah,
about it on the sales team?
yeah, yeah. That'll actually be amazing. So let's definitely plan that. I
Mhm.
think it's a fantastic opportunity.
Yep, yep, yep.
Cool. I mean, do you want to talk about like anywhere people can reach you in a particular? I've seen that you're active on LinkedIn mostly. Where else can people reach you?
LinkedIn, email, Twitter. I think I'm mostly a reply. So I think
Ah,
you can just reach me out. No worries. Yep.
all
I
right.
think we
Sounds.
do have one more other question, right? Here by Aman, or do you want to cover it
Yeah.
now? Like,
So Aman asks, how did you manage the operations team while scaling the process, as making the software would cost a lot of time, money, and headache? I think he's
uh,
talking about tech investment into the whole sales section. Yeah.
Tech investment. So see, yeah. So I think that's a good question here. So we didn't build anything to start with. We use a Zorp. We use Zorp for that. So essentially, the idea here was that you don't cannot invest in sales when you don't know the sales is going to be there as well. So we
Yeah.
were very clear. So we didn't go to a tech team, and we were like, we'll use a third party team, which we can, if it doesn't work out, we can ditch in 3 months essentially. So like Zorp, we get started. It took I think 2 days or 3 days to set it up, and that's how we scaled it. So that is how you basically you don't have to spend headache and money. And
Yeah.
Zorp, because I think Zorp is no code, we could make changes every month. So like say when we say okay, this person is not working, we need something else, we didn't have to code. We just did the no code thing and got it done. So that is why. So and I think we didn't cover it up, but I think yes, if you're basically looking to build software for the sales team, bro, don't build it yourself. At least for the start, at least you have like 50, 100 people, and you're convinced that this is the process is not going to change. Don't do it. I think find something outsourced at which you can pay monthly and get it done.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Awesome.
Awesome.
Cool, Sushil. This has been fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's so much we have actually covered. I
Correct,
think I
correct.
think we didn't do enough justice to each of those topics to talk in detail, but we should definitely do that.
Yep, yep, yep.
Thank you so much on coming here on Saturday evening and talking to us about it. This was like a huge wealth of knowledge. I'm super happy
Mhm.
about how this actually turned out.
Mhm.
Thanks a lot,
Awesome.
man.
Thank you. Bye
All
bye.
right.
Bye bye, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Bye.